They say every empire is born from blood, but some are born from something darker, a curse whispered by dying lips. Ragnar Lothbrok's name carried the weight of legend. For years, his shadow fell across kingdoms. His raids carved fear into the hearts of kings who prayed at dawn and died by dusk. Yet even legends break, and when Ragnar met his end in the pit of serpents, the world did not simply lose a warrior. It gained a storm. The snakes coiled around his body, their fangs sinking deep, and still Ragnar laughed. He laughed because he knew what his death would unleash. He had left behind sons, 5 of them, each carved in a different shape of fury. When the pit closed and the silence fell, he did not die alone. His laughter carried across the wind, across the sea, across the hearts of men who would soon learn what vengeance truly meant. Word of his death traveled faster than ships could sail. Messengers came ashore pale as ghosts, stammering his fate. In the north, where the air bit the skin and the sea roared like an animal, Ragnar's sons heard the news. Bjorn Ironside was the first. He stood upon a cliff above the gray waters, sword in hand, the horizon red with the setting sun. For a moment he could not move. The man who had taught him to fight, to sail, to conquer, was gone. His knuckles turned white around the hilt, but he did not cry. Bjorn had never learned how to. Ubbe received the message by firelight. He was the calm one, the thinker. But as the words sank in, something inside him shifted. He stared into the flames until they blurred, until they looked like serpents twisting in the smoke. He wondered if his father still laughed or if his spirit screamed beneath the earth. Hvitserk sought silence in drink, drowning the thought of Ragnar's end in the taste of mead. The noise of the hall echoed around him, but he heard only the hissing of unseen snakes. Sigurd Snake-in-the-Eye, whose very name was marked by his father's saga, smiled when he heard the news. Yet his smile was wrong, a crack born from disbelief, from envy, from something that could not be named. And then there was Ivar the Boneless, the cripple who had been mocked since birth, the son who crawled before he conquered. When the words reached him, he said nothing. He sat still for a long time, staring into the dark. The others raged, drank, mourned. Ivar only listened to the wind. Then he whispered a single promise. They will pay. That whisper became the first note of war. In the days that followed, the brothers gathered. Longships were called back to shore. Swords were sharpened until they sang against the whetstone. Men who had followed Ragnar now bent the knee to his blood. Before the gods, they swore their oaths. They would avenge their father not as sons, but as instruments of wrath. Each swore in his own way. Bjorn with strength, Ubbe with cunning, Hvitserk with recklessness, Sigurd with jealousy, and Ivar with something darker than all the rest. No priest could have prepared them for what they became. The brothers were different as night and day, but the fire of vengeance made them one. The hearths of Kattegat burned bright as smiths worked through the night. Shields gleamed black in the torchlight, marked with the raven of Ragnar. The clang of iron echoed through the fjords, a dirge for the fallen king. Yet amid the noise, Ivar stood apart. He watched the preparations, his eyes cold and alive. His legs failed him, but his mind did not. While others spoke of ships and swords, he spoke of plans, maps, and fear. Make them afraid before the blade touches them, he said. He understood what terror could do. He would use it as his weapon. They built ships whose prows bore dragons with snarling jaws. They called them the serpents of the north. Sail by sail, they readied themselves, each plank soaked in purpose. When dawn came, the mists lifted to reveal a fleet that stretched across the horizon, the great heathen army, born of grief and forged in rage. But before they sailed, they feasted, a feast not of joy, but of remembrance. Skulls of ale lifted high, meat torn with fists, laughter rough and hollow. Old warriors sang of Ragnar's raids, of Paris, of the walls that fell before his cunning. Yet every song ended the same, with silence, with the image of the pit, the snakes, the father, who would never return. That night, Ivar spoke to his brothers. Father's death will not be forgotten, he said. The kings of the south will learn to fear his name again. Their churches will burn, their sons will drown, and their gods will hide. His voice did not rise, yet every man in the hall heard it. Something ancient moved in his tone, a calm fury, cold and certain. The next morning, mist clung to the ground as if the earth itself feared what was coming. Villagers gathered by the shore to watch the sons of Ragnar depart. Mothers held their children close, old men muttered prayers. The sea waited, black and endless. Bjorn stood at the prow of his ship, eyes fixed on the horizon. Ubbe ordered the sails raised, his voice steady but his hands trembling. Hvitserk laughed, half mad already, calling the gods to watch. Sigurd looked at the sky, wondering if their father saw them. And Ivar sat upon his carved throne amidships, iron braces around his legs, a wolfskin cloak at his back. His eyes gleamed like twin shards of ice. The wind shifted, the sails caught, the ships began to move. Behind them, the people of Kattegat fell silent. Ahead of them, the open sea stretched like a promise. The brothers did not look back. The world behind them belonged to the past. The world ahead was theirs to carve. Days turned to weeks upon the waves. The sea tested them. Storms rose, waves crashed, men prayed. Yet through every roar of thunder, Ivar's gaze never left the west. At night he spoke of Ragnar, of the stories their father told, of the gods who demanded glory. He spoke not of mercy, nor of peace. We are the sons of a god among men, he said, and the world will remember our names. When at last they sighted land, the green cliffs of England, a strange stillness fell. The brothers stood together upon the deck. Each saw something different. Bjorn saw conquest. Ubbe saw strategy. Hvitserk saw fire. Sigurd saw his reflection in the steel of his sword. Ivar saw destiny. But destiny, like blood, is never clean. As they drew closer, ravens circled above, black against the pale sky. The omen did not go unnoticed. Some called it a blessing from Odin. Others whispered of curses. Ivar said nothing. In his mind, the laughter of Ragnar still echoed, faint, mocking, eternal. That night the ships anchored in a narrow bay. Fires lit the shore as men disembarked, axes glinting in the half-light. Ivar's warriors dragged him to land, his iron crutches sinking into the sand. He looked to the trees, to the unseen world beyond. Somewhere out there were the men who had killed his father, kings who believed themselves safe. He smiled, slow and cruel. The world, he thought, will bleed. Behind him, Bjorn ordered the banners raised. The raven of Ragnar unfurled in the night wind. The men roared as one, a sound that rolled through the dark like thunder over mountains. The curse had found its wings. As dawn broke, the first arrows were set alight. The first shields lifted. The first hearts filled with the madness of vengeance. And far across the sea, in the halls of their enemies, kings stirred in their sleep, unaware that the sons of Ragnar were coming, and that the laughter of a dead man was already echoing through their dreams. When the first fires rose over the English shore, the air itself seemed to scream. Smoke curled upward into a gray sky, and beneath it marched the sons of Ragnar. Their boots crushed the wet grass of a foreign land, their banners black against the mist. The great heathen army had arrived, and England would never be the same. Villages fell before sunrise. Churches turned to ash before their bells could finish ringing. The people fled into forests and hills, whispering the names of the northern devils that came from across the sea. Yet these were not demons. They were men, sons, and every drop of blood they spilled was an offering to the memory of their father. Bjorn led the front lines, his axe cleaving through ranks like wind through wheat. He fought with the quiet certainty of a man born for war. His blows were heavy, deliberate, final. Behind him came Hvitserk, laughing as he fought, spinning through the chaos like a spirit unbound by fear. The blood that splattered his face only made him smile wider. Ubbe moved among the ranks like a shadow, steadying formations, commanding order where others saw only madness. Sigurd struck quick and cruel, his jealousy burning brighter with each victory Bjorn claimed. And then came Ivar. He was carried into battle on a shield, his warriors surrounding him like wolves. The ground shook with each cry of his name. From his throne of iron and oak, he directed slaughter with precision no general could match. His eyes followed every movement, predicting every strike before it came. He did not fight with muscle. He fought with fury sharpened into intellect. Where Ivar pointed, death followed. The English king sent envoys begging for peace. Ivar had them executed. He sent their heads back in baskets, mouths still open in prayer. "Let them beg their god now," he said. Weeks passed. Towns burned, rivers filled with bodies. The English called upon their god, but their god was silent. The North had brought not just armies, it had brought retribution. But even as the brothers conquered, cracks began to show. Power is a fire that does not share warmth for long. Bjorn wanted glory. He saw himself as the heir to Ragnar's legend. Ubbe wanted stability. He dreamed of lands of kingship earned through wisdom. Sigurd burned with envy, mocking Ivar behind his back. And Ivar wanted only fear. In the camps at night, when the fires dimmed and the mead flowed, their voices rose. They spoke of the past, of Ragnar's laughter, of what he would have wanted, but each spoke with a different heart. The curse was not in the blood of Ragnar, it was in their hearts. One night a storm rolled over their camp. The rain fell in sheets, drumming on the shields like restless fingers. Ivar sat beneath his canopy, staring into the fire. The flames danced in his eyes like ghosts. Ubbe entered, his voice low, his tone careful. He spoke of peace, of the English king who had offered gold, land, and safe passage. Father sought glory, Ubbe said, but he also sought wisdom. Perhaps vengeance has been served. Ivar's gaze lifted slowly. Vengeance, he said, is never served. It feeds, and it never stops feeding. Outside thunder rolled. Ubbe hesitated. Then it will consume us all. Ivar smiled faintly. Then let it. He turned back to the fire, and in that moment Ubbe knew that Ivar's war was no longer for Ragnar. It was for himself. The next morning the storm cleared. The army moved inland, leaving fields of smoke behind. They took city after city, carving their path through England's heart. But with every victory the brothers grew further apart. Bjorn's men began to call him king. Ivar heard the whispers and did not forget. At the siege of York, the English gathered their last strength. Walls rose high and thick, manned by archers and priests alike. Ivar ordered the assault at dawn. Bjorn protested, warning of traps, but Ivar's pride had deafened him. The attack began under a crimson sky. Arrows rained down like black rain. Men fell screaming, their shields splintering. Ivar's commands cut through the chaos. "Forward!" he roared. "Ragnar watches." They broke through by noon. York fell. The streets ran red, the churches crumbled. Yet amid the victory, Sigurd found Ivar's throne, built of skulls and spears, his father's banner hanging above it. He stared at the seat for a long time before speaking. "You think yourself a god," he said quietly, "but you are only a cripple with delusions." Ivar's smile did not falter. "A cripple," he replied, "who has conquered where you have knelt." From that day, the rift between them could no longer be hidden. The army that had once been bound by vengeance now trembled with distrust. Bjorn saw it. Ubbe felt it. But no one could stop it. The curse was spreading. The curse of Ragnar's pride reborn in his sons. In the months that followed, the victories continued, but celebration turned hollow. Ivar's cruelty grew. He punished disobedience with torment. He ordered executions for suspicion alone. Some of his men began to fear him more than they feared death. Bjorn left the camp one night without a word. Ubbe followed weeks later, disgusted by what Ivar had become. Sigurd stayed, not out of loyalty, but out of spite. Hvitserk wandered between them all, a ghost caught between loyalty and despair. Ivar now ruled what remained, a fractured army, loyal through terror, not respect. His enemies no longer called him the Boneless, they called him the Ruthless. He had become the shadow of the man he avenged. But fate has a way of mocking those who believe they command it. One winter morning, Ivar stood upon a hill overlooking the battlefield. The sky was gray, the ground frozen. His breath hung like smoke. Below him, the remnants of his army faced a coalition of kings united by fear. For the first time, the world had come together, not for faith, not for greed, but to end one man's vengeance. Ivar ordered his men forward. They obeyed. But as the enemy lines advanced, something shifted. The ground beneath them, soaked in the blood of countless raids, seemed to whisper. The ravens circled low, black shapes against the pale light. Ivar felt the weight of unseen eyes upon him, his father's eyes perhaps, or the gods. When the first blades met, the sound was not of battle but of destiny closing its fist. The fighting was brutal, desperate. Bjorn, hearing word of Ivar's defiance, rode to the field, torn between hatred and duty. He arrived to see his brother surrounded, his army collapsing, his throne of skulls turning to dust beneath his feet. Ivar fought to the last, dragged by his men across the mud, his crutches shattered, his breath ragged. Bjorn found him there, bloodied, broken, laughing. "You were right," Bjorn said bitterly. "Vengeance never stops feeding." Ivar's smile faded. Neither do gods. The wind rose, carrying the stench of death across the hills. When the battle ended, the fields were silent. The brothers had won nothing, not glory, not peace, only the memory of a father whose death had chained them to his curse. Years later, the stories would tell of the great heathen army, of the sons of Ragnar who burned kingdoms to ashes. But the old ones, those who still remembered, would lower their voices and say, "The curse was not Ragnar's death. The curse was that he ever lived." And so the laughter of Ragnar Lothbrok did not end in the pit. It echoed through his sons, through their victories, through their madness, through history itself. For in the end, every empire born of vengeance must fall to it. And the sons of Ragnar were no exception.